Wie können wir das Leben, kann man das mit das Leben, das ganze Life, so wird er jetzt gestorben in ein Flugzeug. Wie kann man das leben?
Noch die alle Sachen, was passiert zum ganzen jüdischen Volk in unserem Dorf, in Schaffenswegen, das ein Scheiles. Weil die bald das in der Rebischte lebt sie. Was von Familie wissen sie von den Menschen. Die bald dann ist etwas durchgegangen, die ganze Welt hat geschwiegen und hat noch zugeholfen. Und der Rebischte versucht der Weile noch nicht reagiert. Ich meine, die Sache ist, dass das auch noch mehr verstärken, als in der höchsten Zeit von Mashiach suchen.
Mashiach.
Das ist versprochen, als ich Kasche ist. Wenn sie dann eine Kasche ist, fragen bei Mashiach.
Okay.
Das ist von England. Bon voyage, die gute Psyche. Dann kommt in Kasche.
So the woman is asking, how do I live with the disaster, the tragedy of the loss of a child? How do I live with it? Certainly not how do I get over it. You don't get over it. It's way too big to get over, and there's no virtue in getting over it. But how do you live with it? The Rebbe's answer is, after what happened in our generation, meaning the Holocaust, where not only did God allow this to happen, that a certain group was allowed to do this, but the whole world didn't object and even helped in many different ways. So after such a tragedy, what's the point of asking why? And it's the why that disturbs us. Because things happening without a reason is the most disturbing thing to the human being. So the Rebbe is saying, a tragedy, after the ultimate tragedy, after the huge tragedy, and we don't have an answer for that, can we really ask anymore? So the only solution is Mashiach should come, and there won't be any questions left, and if there are, you'll ask him. So how did that help this mother, who seems to be quite satisfied with the answer? It's almost like, yeah, she had thought of that herself too. Just wanted confirmation from the Rebbe. How does that help? What if you don't believe in Mashiach? So first of all, the Rebbe knows who he's talking to. He's talking to a woman who believes, and he's encouraging her to use that belief to comfort herself after the tragedy. But would this apply to someone who doesn't believe in Mashiach? It does really, in a sense, because after a tragedy, there's one of two things you can do. Go sour on life because you will not move past the tragedy out of some sense of loyalty to the victim. To go back to business as usual seems to be callous, disrespectful, dismissive. And so you stay in the mourning role indefinitely. Or you do the opposite. If the loss of life is so grievous, then life itself must be really fantastic. So the pain at the loss of life drives us to give life more attention, to put more energy into life, to make life better for ourselves and for others. That's, in a broad sense, that's what we mean by Mashiach. So the Rebbe was saying, you can ask the question, You can torture yourself with seemingly good reason. After all, you should be grieving. Or you can use the natural reaction, strong reaction, which is an objection to the loss of life. Use that to fuel your enthusiasm for life. Because that's really what's supposed to happen. To the degree that you celebrate life, to that degree you mourn or grieve the loss of life. So if life were not that precious, why are we so upset by the loss of life, God forbid? And even when you apply it to an individual, it's not the loss of life, it's the loss of my child. Child is precious, not life. Well, you didn't lose your child. The child exists, the soul exists. It knows you, you know it, you're thinking about the soul is thinking about you. The child is still there. The physical life of the child is gone. So, really, you're grieving the fact that your child is not with you on earth. Is it that really that important to be on earth? Is life on earth really that pleasant, that necessary? Well, the natural, painful response to that loss of life tells us that life is pretty important. In our own experience, in our own instinct. So, what do? We enhance life. When you enhance life, your relationship with the person who has departed becomes more real and stronger and more effective. You don't lose touch. It's not like if you stop grieving, you will lose touch with the soul that is departed. On the contrary, if you start living, then you give the soul that is departed a little bit of life as well, because that soul is still having an effect on human experiences, on the world in general, because people are thinking about him or her, people are reacting to him or her. It's not over. So you don't have to grieve to not let it be over. You can live and make sure that it's not over, that soul is still having an effect on the world, because you're inspired to live better by that soul, for that soul. So when a soul passes, we have the expression, it leaves life for those who are living. Not it abandons life, although it could be translated that way. Leaving life means giving some of its life to those who are going to remain alive, so that those who are alive are more alive as a result of the soul that left. So, in simple language, this woman lost a child. The Rebbe is saying that child can still give you life. So if you're busy grieving, you're not communicating. The soul of the child can give you life, can make your life more livable, more meaningful, more fulfilling. So let him. Why block it? The same is true with the people, the tragedies of our time. Babies murdered horribly, really objectionable, really, really disturbing that the news doesn't have the decency to call it what it is. They're speaking about the babies, about the other hostages. And they say they died in captivity. They didn't die in captivity. They were murdered, tortured to death. I wish they could be a little more honest with the news. But the point of it is, how do we respond? What do we do? Of course, we have to all grieve and mourn at least 7 days. But then what? What are those souls doing to us? Depressing us? Scaring us? Making us cynical? Giving up on life? Certainly, no soul wants to do that to any other human being, and certainly not to their own family. So, what do all these souls do for us? They almost force us to live better, live more, make life awesome. And when we do that, we're giving them a life. They still have a role, they're still having an effect on life on earth. So they're not limited to heaven. And no soul, by the way, as much as they enjoy heaven, no soul wants to be just in heaven. Because every soul has a sense of purpose, and purpose is on earth. So if the soul knows that you're giving charity because the soul would want it, that you're lighting a Shabbos candle because the soul would be pleased, then the soul is still doing mitzvahs through you. So you're giving yourself more life, you're giving the soul more life. And look at how spontaneously we've been doing this now for 15 months. For every hostage, for every soldier who is killed, people light Shabbos candles, people keep kosher, people put on tefillin, people give charity. So much good is coming from this because we know that when there's a tragedy, you can either go down with it or you can go up with it. Up means towards Mashiach. So it's time for Mashiach to come and put an end to all this mysterious stuff. Why, what for, how come? They're all good questions. But we're not going to settle for some lame answer. We want an answer from Mashiach himself.